Okay, yeah, you got it. I'm not doing a PowerPoint. I'm gonna do like an old-fashioned show and tell up here. My name is Christina Heller, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of VR Playhouse. We are a creative studio that focuses on immersive content, cinematic content for virtual reality. So just to kind of get a sense of this room, how many of you feel like you're pretty fluent in the current VR landscape? Okay, cool, awesome. It's gonna be so easy then. Awesome. Well, VR Playhouse, start with telling you who our company is. I'll get into a little bit of the current hardware and software that's out there, some of the challenges when it comes to storytelling in virtual reality, and also a little bit of some interesting predictions about the business of virtual reality and also the impact it could have. So to begin with, VR Playhouse is a collective of artists and also technologists. We are based in Los Angeles, which is, for all intents and purposes, sort of the capital of virtual reality right now. It's a huge, huge thing there. Meetups, the last meetup was at LA Live, had well over 1,000 people. It was totally sold out. It's a big deal. We are also specialists in cinematic content for virtual reality headsets. So that means filmed live action content. There's a lot of people who are doing CGI and all kinds of applications for this, but we are interested in telling real stories with real people and being pioneers in developing the kind of technology to be able to basically do the best we can to simulate a real life experience inside the VR headset. So, to begin with, obviously virtual reality has been a dream of people for a long, long time, but the technology to do it was really lagging, and so we weren't seeing a lot of progress in that front. And then cell phones came along and kind of inadvertently gave us the technology that we needed to be able to see the current manifestation of virtual reality. And the reason is, hold on one second, positional tracking. So, the way that when you have your cell phone, it does this thing where it goes like this. Well, it's not even doing it, but you know what I mean. It goes from the side to the top. And because of that gave us the ability to now be inside 360 videos. So I'm using an app right now from a New York-based company that's really awesome called Little Star. And you can see I'm completely inside this video. All right, it's very cool. I can look down, I can look up, I can look everywhere. So Palmer Luckey was the young founder of the Oculus Rift. He basically took a cell phone and put some plastic and some lenses around it and created the Oculus Rift. And this is the DK1, which was the first developer's kit that came out of the Oculus Rift. And we got ours about a little over a year ago. You can see it's kind of clunky, it's not very sophisticated, but the idea is you strap this thing on your head and you are completely immersed in a new environment. That means I can look up, I can look right, I can look left, I can look behind me, and it's all there. Very, very cool. Now, they've had a couple more prototypes of the Oculus Rift since this first DK1 here. And they're coming out with a new one at some point, unannounced, called the Crescent Bay. It has positional tracking, which allows you to move inside of it. It's apparently the resolution is incredible, but more likely than not, the kind of people who are gonna buy this sort of thing are gamers. And the market's gonna be enormous. Gaming inside the Oculus Rift is a completely mind-blowing experience. In the long run, the average mass consumer is going to be consuming virtual reality through their cell phones. So you may have heard of the Google Cardboard. This is a very crude example of a VR headset, but it is a VR headset. It has just this one actually doesn't have two lenses in because it got a little beat up on the travel from Los Angeles, but two lenses, a headset, and you just stick your phone in it. So this is the cheapest version of a virtual reality headset that you can buy, but it works. And the more sophisticated version of that is the Samsung Gear VR, which is this beautiful thing that we've branded with our stuff, and I'm going to be doing some demos with it later. You put the Samsung Galaxy Note in this, and it's a very, very cool thing. Now there's lots and lots of companies fighting for the hardware. We're going to see all kinds of hardware, ranging from things you strap on your head to very subtle little glasses that you can just put your phone in. But the long story short of this is that the barriers to virtual reality at this point are not technological, they're psychological. And the more that people become used to putting it on and checking things out, the more we're going to see this adopted. But I think we're going to see a pretty fast curve on that. As far as software goes, there's a lot of companies out there trying to develop software for this. To varying degrees of success, it's still very early. And VR Playhouse specifically, we are hardware, software, and platform agnostic. We're interested in storytelling and content creation, and that in some ways makes us kind of unique in this space. But we are sorely needed because there aren't a lot of people who are making content for this right now, and that's going to be a big deal when the headsets become released to the consumers in the fall. So let's discuss for a moment storytelling for virtual reality. We have a number of people on our team from various disciplines and fields. One of the things that I think gives us a bit of an advantage is that we have a number of theater people on our team. And theater artists sort of intrinsically understand what is needed to make storytelling in this space happen. And that's because they understand the 360 immersive element. One thing I like to say is that VR is like, it gives you the privacy of a novel with the immersiveness of theater and the distribution capability of digital. So the first and most obvious thing is the 360 element. So instead of being forced to look at a framed video and the storytelling being done in the cuts, instead you're inside an environment. And you can't cut that fast because it's jarring. It would be as if all of a sudden I snapped my fingers and I was like, and now you're in Rome, and now you're back here, and now you're in LA. You'd just be like looking around and confused. So there is a little bit of a slower process, and it's a little bit, you have to be more conscious of it. And I think that theater artists, because of the way that you tell a story in theater, have an advantage in this area. And boy, am I excited for them, because most of my theater friends were like sitting around going like, what am I doing with my life? I'm like, don't worry, virtual reality is gonna save your field. I'm also in LA. I know that in New York, you guys actually support theater artists, and that's amazing. So there's obviously the 360 element. You can look around while you're inside the experience. Because that's there, you can use the elements of being able to look around to your advantage. You can be telling a story over here while something's over here. You can be directing someone's attention here and then tell them to look over here. But I think one of the things that is less expected is the intimacy element, which is the fact that when you slap that headset on, you feel completely alone inside the headset. And it's very different from watching something on television where millions and millions of people are watching it with you, or movies. It actually affects your neural passageways in the same way that real life does. And it affects the same centers of memory formation that real life does as well. And so that is something that you can use to your advantage when you're telling stories in this space, is that feeling of aloneness. And we are developing lots of stuff with that. But one thing that I hear a lot of the times when I give demos is people being like, oh, I felt something in there. And they're not used to, honestly, we're not used to really feeling things anymore when we watch media, because we've become incredibly desensitized to it. But there's something about, in for example, one of our series, we put you in a bedroom with this girl in a towel smoking weed. It's not pornographic. But there's just something about being in the hotel room with her in a towel and her smoking pot, and you're just like, you feel something. You're like, shoot, I'm not supposed to be here. This is dangerous. What if my wife saw me? And that's an incredibly powerful tool, and something that I think is really exciting as a storyteller to begin to explore. We're also very excited about augmented reality. That's more, I think, in I would say our 1 year, 18-month sort of plan, but it's very exciting to imagine the kind of storytelling and creative experiences you can make when you can blend virtual and physical worlds. One of the things that's also fun about VR is like you can basically take real life, but then use film tools to manipulate real life. So like I can be sitting here looking at this guy, and then all of a sudden he could, like his aura could fly out of his body, or just interesting things like that that like make it reality just heightened. So we are working on a few really interesting projects right now. Couple series. One of them is called First Person, which is being John Malkovich style experience, where you're inside this guy's head as he's experiencing the emotional and intimate moments of his life. That's the one I was just talking about with the girl in the bed. He is a recent divorcee out there dating, trying to make it in the world, and you get to sort of experience dating and the exciting and perils thereof through his eyes. And we're going to be releasing the beginning of that in June on all of the platforms. We are also working on a number of travel series, because I think virtual travel is an obvious application for this, and it's really cool. Plus, who wouldn't want to do a travel show? It's like kind of the dream job. We are also talking with a ton of brands. We just did something for Red Bull that's going to be coming out. We're talking with a lot of brands about how we can bring their brand identity into the virtual space, tell some stories for them, or take their existing IP and translate it into a VR native experience, because that is the kind of thing we spend all of our time thinking about and obsessing over. This might sound a little cheesy, but because I feel like at all these sort of tech things, they always do this sort of thing, but I still think this is very fascinating. So the time period it took to reach 50 million people. Radio, it took 38 years. TV, it took 14 years. Internet, 4 years. And they're saying that it's going to take VR till 2016. So it's like 1 year. They're saying we're going to see 50 million people using this technology. And I can assure you from the kind of conversations I'm having with major brands that things like Google Cardboard are going to be like, we're going to start seeing VR integrated into so many aspects of consumer culture. It's just going to become an onslaught, and I really believe it's going to start this fall. Predictions from Techcrunch, they're saying it's going to be a $150 billion industry by 2020. That's all very exciting. We're excited to be a part of it. I think, and so long run, in addition to storytelling, I think that the virtual reality sphere is going to affect basically every single sector, and there's going to be plenty of people developing all kinds of applications for it. We're specifically interested in creative storytelling and original IP, but I am also interested in the therapeutic benefits of this thing. I think that there could be a lot of really interesting simulations for people who have phobias and insecurities and helping overcome them. And also, we could begin to see people being able to fulfill some of their dreams inside virtual spaces instead of physical spaces. So instead of like we're kind of running out of space on the planet, as we heard on that last panel, with millions and millions and billions of people, and we're trying to build things everywhere. But what if we could build inside virtual spaces and still get the kind of innate satisfaction you get from building something with your hands and not actually have to build it in the physical world? So that gives me a very optimistic view of virtual reality in a way that it could help the world. And I'll be happy to do some demos for you afterwards, as long as I can sustain them, because unfortunately I have to give them one at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Show and tell format.
Yeah.
So we're going to open up to questions. One question from me. How do you shoot?
I didn't get into that. So right now, we have very limited technology or limited tools to do the kind of storytelling that we're doing. It's basically all hacked together solutions. So we shoot with various cameras, usually like 6 to 10 different cameras, shooting in a full 360 simultaneously. On the low end, you can do that with GoPros. It can obviously go up all the way to the higher end, and you can spend $200,000 or $300,000 on a camera that gives you very, very high level imaging. From there, it's kind of like a inverse thing where the more you are willing to spend on the production element, meaning going with these really nice cameras that stitch inside them, the less you do on the post. So, for example, if you're shooting with 10 GoPros, you then have to go in the post-production end and stitch those 10 GoPros into a seamless video panorama. And we do that using a number of post-production software solutions, but primarily AutoPano's color AutoPano, and also After Effects, a ton of After Effects. But they do have cameras that can stitch, live stitch, which are more expensive on the production end, like I said, but save you a lot of time on the post. So, you know, we at VR Playhouse are moving really in that direction, and when we talk to clients, we're like, look, I know it seems expensive, this camera, but trust me, the reliability factor, the live stitching factor, you don't want to mess with the GoPros. But that is part of how we do that.
So,
yeah.
We only have one mic, so I'm going to give the mic to you, and please, I can speak loudly, and if you could do me a favor, Christina, repeat the question.
Sure. Yeah, just.
How do you control the story?
How do you control the story? Well, that's an interesting question, and those are the kinds of conversations we have a lot at the Playhouse. You can do it with light. You can do it with characters. You can do it with sound. So obviously capturing 3D sound is a huge element of this, and all of a sudden I'm looking at him, but I hear something behind me and I can turn. So it's kind of like theater. You know, how do you control where people look at during a play or during an immersive theater experience? Sleep No More obviously is a huge inspiration for that kind of storytelling. But I'm also a fan of the idea that maybe you don't try to control it and you allow people to discover different stories through repeat viewing experiences. So maybe this time I happened to catch this one sort of story that was happening, but when I watch it again, I noticed something I didn't see that first time. Speaking of that, one of the tools that we are really close to being able to implement is multilinear storytelling, which depending on where you're looking, you can follow that storyline. So, you know, they can already do positional tracking with your eyes inside this thing. And you know, you'll be able to be like, oh, I'm interested in this couple, and then you follow them, or you know, this way or that way. Anyone else? Yeah.
How do you get the person that's in it involved in the character? So whose voice are they hearing? Are they talking?
That's a really good question. So for first person, you have a voice. It's not yours. I would love for it to be more interactive, and if it's in the CG realm, I think that's possible. In live action, it's not quite yet. So in first person, you just are inside. It's like truly like being John Malkovich, where you're just inside his experience as he's talking and going through his life, which some people find jarring, other people find it kind of like a relief, you know. So anyone else? Yeah.
One concern that I have that it seems that content, the meaning of the stuff will inevitably drop down dramatically because there's so much happening. There are multiple stories, and there's no one single story with a point. In some sense, it's simply events that are happening. So it seems that as you know, where our technology is developing in terms of full immersion, how are we able to increase the value that the media has, or at least maintain the value?
I think that you should come to Los Angeles and become part of our think tank. No, I mean, I think that's a good point. I just think it's a completely different type of storytelling. I think the value and the things that you're going to get from it are going to be different. It's probably going to be merged a little bit with gaming. I think it's going to be more of that kind of experience. But I don't know, as somebody who is a big fan of real life experiences, I think that there's some real value in being able to simulate real life experiences, and I do think there'll be value in that if I can immerse myself someplace that's not here. And we're really only limited by our imagination as far as that goes. But yeah, it does take like a rewiring of the way you think about storytelling. And in some ways, traditional filmmakers are at a disadvantage because they're so locked into this one way of editing and telling a story. And I fall into it too, as somebody who's done a lot of editing myself. You know, the first time I sat down to edit a documentary for this space, which we did, we went down to Nicaragua, we brought all the 360 cameras, we came back with a ton of footage. I'm so used to using B-roll as a device that I was just like a little bit at a loss. But it's these kinds of experiments that are going to lead us to whatever is going to be the most compelling, VR native content.
One last question.
I'm curious, you mentioned new bio pathways being triggered, and I guess because of the isolation, because of the richness of the experience, I guess I'm curious, it'd be like the first time someone watched a color TV, whether new bio pathways were triggered, this is in black and white or sound films or whatever. I'm just kind of curious, like your thoughts maybe like the acclimation process once they were knowledge and experience wears off, did those pathways sort of does that true sense of
Okay, so he was basically like saying that as people get more used to using VR, will their pathways also become maybe desensitized, or will the novelty wear off? And I think yes, in a way, like when you give someone their first VR demonstration, their like mind is blown at this point. Like I'm just kind of like yeah, I've seen it all. I think therein is the challenge. Like it's our job to make stuff that keeps people engaged and keeps them informed. If they're bored, then that's on us. And I think that more than them being disengaged, I think the big question is how long can people realistically stay inside these virtual experiences? I think that might change when the viewing method changes. Right now, it's the phone, so it's being projected at you, but there's a lot of talk of reflective viewing, where it's going to be projected and then reflected back at you, so it'll be easier on your eyes. So I think it remains to be seen. All I know is that people are really into it, and it's a truly global phenomenon. So I don't anticipate that there'll be a fall off right away, but I think it'll be very interesting at least to track the viewing habits and what works and what doesn't. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.